All I want to know is, what is the guy's name on second base? No. What is on second? Who is on first? That Abbott and Costello have had us guessing for quite some time. And it gets really confusing trying to figure out where everybody is. Because who is the name of the person on first? And what is the name of the person on third? And of all things, I don't know is the name of the person on third. So, who's on first? Yes, I mean the fellow's name. Who? The guy on first. Who? The first baseman. Who? The guy playing. Who is on first? And round we go. It reminds us of the absolute importance of the 5 W's. Remember those questions that we learn in elementary school? Questions that are so central to the work of a journalist to get the story straight. Who, what, when, where, and why. That if we don't tend to those W's carefully, we end up going around and around and around in circles. And admittedly, we focus on some W's more than others. We always want to know who, because we want to know who's involved. And we are quick to ask what, because we want to know what who is doing. And eventually we get around to asking when and why. But coming in very last place is where. But where is just as important as the other W's. In terms of where, we usually focus on here. Here, right here, where I am and what I am doing. Where is the most important when I am here? Here is the most familiar to us. If we have any worries, if we have any concerns, it's usually about what's going on over there. Because it's different over there. We're not sure God is found over there. But if we don't ask the question where correctly, we end up going around and around in circles, or even worse, we end up just staying here and never going over there. When we focus on the question of where in the Gospel of John, we find Jesus this morning at the sheep gate. It was a square, like a courtyard inside the temple. It was surrounded by 4 colonnades or walkways. And inside this square were 2 different pools, separated by a 5th walkway cutting across the square. And it's the place where the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed would gather. So it was over there. It's where they gathered. But out of his compassion, Jesus goes over there and says to this man who had been there for 38 years, he was ill and hoping that the waters in those pools would heal him. But every time he tried to get in, someone would jump in front of him. And Jesus said to him, "Get up, take your mat and walk." And the man got up, took his mat, and walked away. Later, this man would get into trouble, of all things, for carrying his mat on the Sabbath. And Jesus would get into trouble for healing on the Sabbath. And all those people who were upset were focused on the wrong W, focused on the wrong question, which is what happens when we finally go over there. Because we are so focused on finding God here where we are, we don't realize, we don't expect to find God at work over there. When I was growing up, I was told many times by Sunday school teachers, Bible study leaders, all who had great intentions, were wonderful and good people with a great deal of wisdom and insight. And they kept telling me, make sure that you take God with you wherever you go, especially if you go over there. The only problem is God does not fit inside a suitcase, which is what the Apostle Paul realized and discovered on all his missionary journeys. Paul was always going somewhere and having his passport stamped. He was going from place to place. His suitcase was always packed. So on that day when he saw that vision of a man from Macedonia, he felt called to go over there. And he picked up his suitcase and he set sail for Troas, going all the way to Philippi, that leading city in Macedonia. And Paul thought he was taking God with him over there. But when he got there, he went down to this place of prayer. And he met Lydia. And Lydia worshiped God. And Paul realized God was already there. And since Lydia was a dealer in purple cloth, a businesswoman with wealth and a house, she provided the church a place to meet, even supported Paul's ministry, that Paul thought he was bringing God to Macedonia, and he discovered God was already at work over there. And oftentimes we discover this through the gift of prayer. That through prayer, we realize that God is here and there and everywhere. It is, as one writer has said, we are dusting for divine fingerprints throughout the world. And prayer oftentimes is how we dust for God's fingerprints. It opens us up to God here and God there. And prayer is not, we're not required to be here or there in order to pray. We can pray everywhere. It's not a skill that we have to master. It is a practice that masters us. It is stillness and listening. It is speaking honestly and asking for help. It is expressing our gratitude and sharing our love with God. It is all of those things. In his spiritual classic, Practicing the Presence of God, Brother Lawrence writes, practicing the presence of God is the concentration of the soul's attention on God. That prayer is simply giving our attention to God because God is here and God is there. I have a friend who, when she was in college, worked at a summer camp. But about midway through the summer, Michelle got this unexpected phone call. Her grandfather, someone with whom she was very close, had passed away without much warning. And all of a sudden, her day, her summer, her life changed. That her heart ached in ways it had not before. All of a sudden, she did not want to be there at camp. She wanted to be here at home. But her parents could not come pick her up for a couple days. There was so much to tend to at home, so she would have to wait. And during those days, camp is so much about fun and activity, neither of which appealed to her. She had a hard time just walking through the routine. And without even realizing it, she found herself spending a great deal of time in prayer, just giving her soul's attention to God. She turned to God for comfort. She expressed everything she was feeling, all of the range of her emotions. She sat in silence and just longed for God's grace. On the day that she was to be picked up, her parents were going to get there early afternoon, so she just sat next to the playground and watched the children play, swinging, running, laughing. But as she sat there, she noticed just a little ways from her was a child also sitting on the sidelines. And it wasn't like him. He was usually swinging from the monkey bars or racing down the slide. So she decided to get up, and quietly she just walked over to him and sat down. She didn't say a word. They just sat there in silence. But then, all of a sudden, the little boy turned to Michelle and said, "My grandfather passed away this week." And Michelle just started to cry. And she said, "So did mine." And they just found comfort in sitting there together. That God is here, and God is there, and God is everywhere. And through the gift of prayer, of giving our souls attention to God, we just might discover God's presence. in places we had not noticed it before. Amen.